Hi, Dr. Aptar. Thanks for joining us today. We've got attendees from all over the place. Actually, we got people coming in from higher education side. We've got people coming in from the training industry. We've got people coming in from corporate. We got a wide range of people here today. I'm really happy to see that. We're just about to start. So grab your coffee, grab your water. We'll begin very, very shortly. Just to point out, the chat function is actually disabled for this session. But if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A chat function at the bottom. We will also be streaming this live via YouTube. So if any of your members or friends can't join for any reason, please do guide them to the YouTube link as well. We will share it across very shortly. Okay, guys, I think let's just kick things off. We have over 160 people here in attendance. People will be strolling in as it goes, but we will start right now. Thank you very much for joining us today on this Thursday morning. Today, we will be going through a whole series of speakers across the various industries and the various types of people as well. Today, just before we start, I just want to get you guys into some housekeeping arrangements that we're doing. The chat function will be disabled. However, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put it in the Q&A chat function below. The flow today would be such that we will go through each speaker will speak for about roughly 10 minutes. And we'll go through each speaker before we open up for questions at the end. So, throughout the process, feel free to just throw in your questions and we can just take it from there. And for any reason we are unable to reach your questions today, after the event, we will be sending a follow-up email answering all the questions that were unanswered, as well as the slides that were presented today. So don't worry about it so much. We will make sure that we send that across to you right after the session as well. So without further ado, welcome to this webinar today, Redesigning Education, Skills Training, and Workplace Learning. It's part of our ongoing effort to bring together speakers and create discussions in terms of how do we navigate this current environment, the latest best practices and movements in the education and training industry, HR industry, L&D industry. We're definitely in uncharted waters at the moment. It's been a prolonged period like this, and it's now about looking forward in terms of how do we adapt to the new normal and how do we adapt to the new styles of education and training. With many people struggling how to cope, there's so many ways and so many challenges that we're facing, from infrastructure to financials to even just experience in the mode of delivery, right? So the idea here today is to hopefully inspire and hear from the experts and hear from people who are doing it in different ways, so that you can take it back and kind of do it in your own way and modify it to how you like it to go, and just learn and just ask as many questions as you like to the speakers in terms of what they are doing and how maybe you could utilize it for yourself as well. So today we are joined by four speakers. I'll let them introduce themselves as well. Our first speaker is Ms. Sharmini and Jacob, who is the Executive Director of People and Change Advisory in KPMG Malaysia. Sharmini,
good morning, everyone.
Yep, you're in.
Yeah, hi, morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to sharing with you some high-level things on what corporates are doing as far as learning is concerned. And as Shavin said, let's have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next speaker is Khairuniza Mustafa, who is the GM Consultation of Research and Development in NIOSH Malaysia.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Thank you, OpenLearning, for the opportunity. And I'm pleased to see most of the speakers this morning. And we are prepared to share with you our experience in managing occupational safety and health training during pandemic situation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The third speaker we have is Dr. Chua, who's the head of the Malaysian Smart Factory 4.0 for SHRDC.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We really hope to share what we have done and hope to inspire everyone here today in terms of how do we, redesign and re-innovate training, right, in this current pandemic kind of environment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. And lastly, one of our very own, Mr. Grant Beavers, who's our Senior Education Advisor at OpenLearning.
Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. And it's a great pleasure to be on the webinar today. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the trends and opportunities that I see as I talk to many of our partners and customers around the world, and certainly in Australia. I'm coming to you from Australia, but I'm certainly looking forward to talking to you about trends around the world as we get into this interesting time. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. All right, guys, so you've heard from our speakers. They're coming from all kinds of industries and sectors, and they're doing very, very different things. So this is an opportunity for almost everyone to kind of ask questions across the board in terms of what they're doing and what they could look like. What will the future of training look like? What are other organizations doing, and what are early adopters kind of doing right now? What are the recommended next steps or resources that they're using? Please feel free to ask any question that you like. Please put it in the Q&A chat function at the bottom, and we'll get to the questions right after the presentations. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Ms. Sharmini and Jacob, and I'll let her present moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharmin. Let me just share my screen. All right, hope you can see the screen. So I'm just going to touch very highly on what some of the things are, what's happening around the market, and touch a little bit on what learning and development within the corporate world can actually do to further enhance their trainings within the organization. So if you think about it, what's been happening over the last 1.5 years is there is a need to increase the speed of business. Technology is rapidly changing, and there are conflicting generation demands. And obviously, underlying all of this is COVID-19. In normal circumstances, the businesses had all these three things, and now with COVID coming in, this has become even more challenging to people. At the end of the day, what are your people saying? So over the last 1.5 years, KPMG globally as well as locally has conducted some surveys. And if you look at what's showing on your right on the right of your screen, first one is 81% of HR executives are now saying training or talent development is their #1 priority. And now this is for a number of reasons. The first one being is because now people are working from home, they now end up having to actually talk about what does that mean to me? How do I further enhance collaboration? How do I now look to make sure that my people know what's happening, why is it happening, and how is it affecting them? 47% of the workforce, because of this whole pandemic, there is now a need to be reskill or upskill towards this new reality within Malaysia. And this survey was done last year, so we are in the first 12 months already, and you can see organization upping their learning, more learnings coming in. The type of learnings have also changed within the organization. 66% of global executives cite upskilling as their top priorities and are now using AI and other related technologies to make sure that training gets to their people. So no longer is it face-to-face because we can't do face-to-face. So everything is now virtual. So how do we make that an exciting priority? And 57% of Malaysians have now prioritized upskilling and reskilling. So you can see there is a trend that's going on here. You know, more and more training is becoming more important. Upskilling or reskilling your people is priority. So what does that mean? If you think about it, post-COVID, training was fairly easy to do, you know, or easier. Training is never easy, but training was easier to do because you had manual, traditional ways of doing it, you know, where you could develop the content, you get everyone into a room, and you have face-to-face sessions with them. Most companies already had what's known as a blended learning, where you would have like a 3 level of trainings, for example, like start off with e-learning and then go into a classroom environment and then do a case study or do some sort of report once you go back into the workforce, all right? And there were individual learning plans. Now that individual learning plans has become even more important now. So what does learning look like now or in the future? You need to have self-tailored learning portals. So each individual within your organization would have unique needs. Now, how do we cater for all these at the end of the day? You need to have various platforms to make sure that the training message goes out to your people. No longer can we do face-to-face. So what is the replacement to face-to-face? Online platforms have become very crucial to organizations now, but it's not just about online platforms. You also need to make sure that it is exciting to your people. You cannot just sit there and talk for the longest while and not have any interaction with your people when you're training them, all right? Virtual reality is future skills are powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what does that mean for your organization? You need some form of reporting to monitor how well your people are doing in upskilling and reskilling them. So is your training working at the end of the day? Does it have the expected results for your people? Okay, and last but not least, one of the things that you really need to think about is mobile first design. So how mobile is the training that you are developing? It needs to be accessible to your people anywhere and at any time. So what does that mean for organizations? These are 8 things that organizations need to think about when you are looking at your training needs. First one is assessing your maturity levels. So where are you now and what do you want to be? How do you improve? How is your technology within the organization? How good are your facilitators within your learning and development team? You know, are they able to virtually train your people? Determine the learning technology functional requirement, you know, so from the facilitators, from your training needs and how well have you been established, you need to think about the portal that you are disseminating the training to. You need to establish a baseline with a broader learning ecosystem. So no longer can you depend just solely on your organization, but you need to tap on the wider community to make sure that your people are getting the relevant training that they need. Okay. Transition from traditional to future learning experience. As I mentioned in the previous screen, there are things that we used to do which we can no longer do. No longer can I have 20 or 30 people sitting in the same room. It now needs to be a virtual room. So how is that impacting my training becomes crucial. We need to, at the end of the day, partner with various workforce data owners in HR and other business units to make sure that the data we give, the requirements that we have for our people are taken care of. Investment is going to be key. Unfortunately, we cannot run away from investment. We need to make sure that the learning tools that we have can support the training that is needed for the organization. You need to also invest in learning libraries that actually help you deliver the training, and also have your people have a library that they can go to and do quick searches that will help you become more effective and efficient. And last but not least, it needs to also take care of jobs that are going to be needed within your organization in the future. So even if you think about jobs as well, the way you do things pre-COVID is very different from now during the COVID, and it's going to alter again post-COVID. So is your training taking care of all those three things? So in a nutshell, this is what your future of learning looks like. It needs to take care of a virtual environment. It needs to take care of your current and future skills needs. And last but not least, you must invest to make sure that the platform you're using is suitable to your organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharmini. Guys, you just heard from Sharmini, who's the Executive Director of People and Change with KPMG Advisory. She touched on, how as a company, you should be really looking into this, right? And how things can change. But that being said as well, if you're a training company or an education company, these are the same things that you should be looking at from the other side of the spectrum as well, in terms of how you would engage that with your potential clients as well. So feel free to ask as many questions as you like. Please put it in the Q&A chat, and we will address it towards the end of the presentations. Thank you so much, Sharmini.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kairuniza Mustafa from NIOSH Malaysia, who's going to present to us about the experiences that he has had over the past 1 year.
Thank you, Sarvin. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic given is actually redesigning education, skills training, and workplace learning. And I'm very pleased to be invited. I'm also very pleased to share some of the experience that we had the past 1 year. I will be also sharing the recent development that we have. Truly, it's a new normal, new norm for this organization, and the future of development of this online training is actually now. And we have to work fast in responding to the needs from the workers at large, especially for this MCO 3.0. The economy is lively, despite of the requirement of control in socializing activities. And let me put you into context. We are involving in the training for workers, and that definitely attract crowds. And to put SOP in place and enforce it at the highest level is very difficult for each and every one of us. But somehow after a year, we can see the development of cultural adaptation by most of the workers. And also we kept on sharing the message from Ministry of Health. Apart from that, NIOSH also involved not only training, but also testing some of the face cover, face masks, and also N95 that come into the nation. We have recently occupied a test lab, and we feed this information to the frontliners, Ministry of Health, PDRM, ATM, and those involved in the SJR, Sekatan Jalan Raya. So let me go through the slide with you. My short presentation will cover the introduction to OSH training. Occupational safety and health literally is not new, but somehow it should be enhanced during this pandemic situation when health plays a prominent element in this subject. And also the impact of COVID, a short one, to OSH training. As I mentioned earlier, it's about crowding business and business with crowds. The more crowds we have, the more numbers that we get, and then the more benefits that we get from that particular session. But somehow, when COVID is around, certain control need to be put in place, and we are lucky, we consider lucky that there's no single case recorded during the session. And also current OSH training offered by NIOSH, just to give you context of how we work with the essentials, how necessary the training need to be conducted. While managing health and pandemic, we still have to deliver safety training. You can imagine this event that comes in large numbers and multiple locations, and we need to ensure that everyone comply with the SOP given by MKN and also KKM. And also conclusion and future of training. There will also be a promotion for those who actually involved in the e-hailing that will come towards the end of the session. We care about these workers that actually on the road delivering package, delivering your food, delivering your delivery that you ordered online. And we need to give them some knowledge on protecting themselves while on the road. First of all, as a worker, we have 16 million of them, 2 million plus 2 million in the government, and another registered 2 million of foreign workers. So all in all, I'm saying we are dealing with a population of 20 million of workers in Malaysia, nationwide. And there's a requirement under Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994. We help people at work to learn how to protect themselves from hazard and risk. That will be the obligations of the National Institute mandated by the government, together with other training providers registered with Department of Occupational Safety and Health under Ministry of Human Resources. We have quite a good fundamentals and framework over there, and I'll show a little bit later. But first, as an employer and self-employed person, what do they need to do in ensuring the safe and healthy workplace for the workers? It was stated in section 15(2)(c), the employer must provide instruction, training, and supervision to ensure, so far as is practicable, the safety and health at the workplace for their employees. And this also extends to other person at work that involve contractors, visitors, and also other parties concerned that come to their premise and might be affected by the cost of work. So what I'm saying, if you're familiar with Occupational Safety and Health Act, such organization will be able to manage COVID-19 and comply with the SOP effectively, because it's just another hazard to be dealing with. We consider as biological hazard. There are also other hazards that they need to engage and also control the risk so as to reduce the number of incidents. The framework that I mentioned just now, these three organizations actually under Ministry of Human Resources, they're responsible for national OSH policy. We're going to have OSH MP to be launched somewhere in June, Occupational Safety and Health Master Plan 2021 to 2025. This one led by Ministry of Human Resources through Department of Occupational Safety and Health, and they also host the meeting for National Council of Occupational Safety and Health. So basically, DOSH, NIOSH, and SOCSO, all three departments and agencies actually under purview of this ministry, so that we can streamline from the policy level down to the implementation, enforcement, training, and also compensation. DOSH, Department of Occupational Safety and Health, usually the market, the workers, and also the employers get confused with these two organizations, NIOSH and DOSH. Given the name slightly the same, but the difference is they are actually in the department. They're all dealing with the enforcement and also standard setting for occupational safety and health and industries. As for NIOSH, we deliver 4 core elements, which are training. We do a bit of consultancy. This is to improve the workplace. We go down to the workplace and help them to control and manage the risk of the employers. So for consultancy, the focus would be for the employers. We deal with the employers. And for research and development, we work with universities in looking into areas of concern. And with subject matter expert in the universities. And this is meant for the industry and the public population at large. And lastly, it's about information dissemination. If you can go through our websites and also our Facebook, we actively concerned about occupational safety and health during pandemic, and lots of infographics being published on a weekly basis. And so we have so many information that consistent with the announcement by the Ministry of Health. And lastly, we have SOSO. They become more prominent now. They involved with the compensation. So if anything incident were to happen in the workplace, they involve in the compensation of the workers. And also recently they embark into rehabilitation. They even have rehabilitation of hospitals in Malacca, and coming up a new one up north. And they're concerned about return to work, and recently about people who lost their job and occupation, they can also go for SOSO. So I would say from Ministry of Human Resources, we are playing a bigger role, a part of job for the job seekers, but also we need to protect the people who are actually really doing their work during this time, because they're also considered as essentials. Some statistics, we can see the increase of numbers. This is due to the awareness from the employer. Some enforcement done by DOSH. They also prosecuted some of the employers for failure of compliance. And also, we can see in 2020, there's a slight reduction in people that comes for training due to this recent pandemic situation. However, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We also recorded 10% people engaged through online platforms. So this we are complying, an example of compliance, people that we have to welcome every workers, and also there are specific requirements during the classroom, and trainers who are actually exposed during CMCO and RMCO, their full compliance to pandemic situation. The control comes very beginning, the guard posts, and then come down to people in the classroom. We serve food packs so that, and they also need to be reminded to maintain their distance of 1 to 1.5 meters all the time. A bit of our development philosophy and framework in NIOSH, we believe in ensuring the quality and effectiveness of OSH training online. And now we are considering to look into offline as well. We begin the process with analyze, we design, and we develop. For these 3 conventional methods, there's no change about it. But during pandemic, for the element of implement, we have to consider not only for the 15 locations implementing OSH training nationwide, but also having it in an online platform. And that contributes 10% of the total number of participants per annum. And we are also exploring the element of remote assessment these days. And a lot of things need to be done now. We are looking to that area as well. As I mentioned, particular requirements for trainings basically is about transmit knowledge, but we also being challenged on how skill can be developed and confirmed in the assessment, and also how we measure the attitude. All in all, being done under regulatory requirement, and some of it comes from the industrial request. We have 4 classes of training: OSH induction, OSH competency that develop competent person that will help the employer to deliver training and have their own training system. OSH awareness and skill, this is open for public, everyone can embark into this. Minimal prerequisite requirement, as this is part of the obligation by the National Institute. And also we train OSH trainers. So this has become a post-retirement career opportunities for those competent persons, to just keep them in the cycle and share their experience with the younger generation. All in all, this is in cyclical mode, and we are managing the workers from the age of 16 up to 60, and also in consideration of future workers below 16, and also post-retirement workers above 60. All right, so I would like to draw your attention to the program that we offer through OpenLearning platform. The very reason why we have been invited, and we are very pleased to announce that we thank OpenLearning for their consistent support and stable platform. We managed to record, as I mentioned earlier, 10% of our total number of workers engaged through online, whether it is self-learning mode or rather it is remote learning mode. We are looking to opportunities to enhance. And the requests keep on coming from the subscribers who now believe that training, occupational safety and health, whether it is skill or rather it is knowledge-based, can effectively be conducted through online platform. We have 6 currently available in OpenLearning. Compliance to regulations under Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994. This is basic on legal requirements. And induction for oil and gas safety passport. These are essentials. Petronas are producing, Shell are producing. They didn't stop during MCO. So the workers need to be trained in order to go to the workplace during this season. And also Petronas Safety Passport remote learning and refresher course. And we managed to attract our friend in Sarawak, Sarawak Energy. And we are discussing with Tenaga at this moment, and also Expressway in the midst of finalizing their decision. The other 2 involved with workers on the road, safe motorcycle riding for e-hailing workers. Currently, we have a promotion of free courses with insurance coverage for people who actually embark into the e-hailing services now. Recorded number of incidents now alarming, and we have statistics. People are talking about it, and we play our role as well. Launched during end of Ramadan, and currently subscribed by 800 workers. There are more. There are another 4,200 slots to be taken, and this is complementary for us to deliver these measures to people actually working on the road. The other one is safe driving, still about people who actually involved in the logistic and transporting the delivery for the platform, online platform. So as a conclusion, to meet National OSH program, it is necessary for us to not to stop to work and support the essentials while work is still going on. And employers must carry out their responsibility ensuring their workers themselves accessible to training physically during CMCO and RMCO, and also virtually during MCO. And upcoming, what's good in 2022, we are finalizing a few modules that will be delivered through augmented reality simulation. This is our effort in embarking into Industrial Relation 4.0. Some training requires video, some requires interactive situation, which called simulation training, that trains managers, supervisors, and workers to demonstrate their responsibilities at workplace and necessary action to be taken in complying with the legal requirements. The module is in the pipeline towards the end now. We have a strict quality control and pilot study need to be done. And I would say the laboratory that contained this NIOSH augmented reality simulation now in progress for some courses that shares a 360 view of the workplace. As you can see here, we have confined space entry simulation. We have working at height simulation. These works need to be carried out, and if we were to train them and let them make mistake in the real situation, it could be fatal. So we transfer it to simulation, just like the flight simulation that we have for pilots. And I would say currently the cost is bearable, and it comes with the requirements that requested by the industries and workers. So ladies and gentlemen, that's about it from NIOSH. not only training, we also do consultation, research, and information dissemination. But today I will touch so much on training that is ongoing. Even this morning, we have 5 online training simultaneously. So while speaking, we have other trainers that are conducting trainers course, induction course, as we become the big to the organization and industry out there. So Mr. Savid, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for the time. I really enjoy it. I'm prepared to receive question and answer so as we can share this experience with the viewers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nizam. Guys, you just heard from NIOSH Malaysia, who is an industry lead body. They are in charge of running training programs nationwide. And they are adopting online learning as a means of reaching their audience in a different way. Mr. Nizam shared the various programs that they're running and types of ways they're doing it. So feel free to ask any questions that you could just learn from as well, because they're running it nationwide. They're running it in very specific industries as well, so never know what you can learn from that as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Nizam.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Chua, who is head of the Smart Factory in SHRDC. Please feel free to take it away.
Hello. Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Sarvin, for the quick introduction, and a very good morning, everybody present here today. I hope you are able to see my slides. Let me just put it in full screen. And I hope that you are actually able to see my slides changing, just to make sure that we are on the same page. All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And a very good morning to everybody present here today. It's really good to be able to share with you today what we have done in the Selangor Human Resource Development Center, right? To actually, re-innovate how we deliver technical skills training through a remote online training environment, right? So this is our experience sharing in which we work with OpenLearning very closely, right? In terms of delivery of technical training through a remote training environment. And this concept or this topology may or may not work well for you. However, this is based on our use case and our current plans moving forward in terms of how do we deliver remote training more effectively and more who are actually doing it on the other end of the computer, right? So why we embark on this journey of remote training, remote online training, is to enhance the experience of technical training and education in Malaysia and further on as well. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, as what we always advocate in terms of Malaysian Smart Factory, what we do to support the industries in terms of industrialization 4.0, right? We also talk about the digital transformation of technical training and education, right? And possible topologies, right, of how delivery of training and education is done, right, in this current environment is basically divided into these 3 key components as what we observe, right? One will be the virtual training platforms that many of you have had the initial experience, right, back in 2020, when we needed to translate face-to-face education directly straight to virtual environment. The first thing that was done was to change the face-to-face delivery to an online delivery, right? Whether is it live, whether is it recorded version, and it can come from many multiple platforms like MS Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, GC, and many others, right? Now, some of the learning and development specialists, right, or training provider specialists, what they also enhanced later on was talking about collaborative training platforms, right? Using tools such as Miro, Mentimeter, Wonder, Kahoot, many different kinds of collaborative training platforms that are actually used to create, the participant engagement, right? I believe that the key component of it is always on participant engagement, because you wouldn't want to just be listening all the way because it sounds just like a recorded video, but you want to be engaged and be involved in the whole session, right? And some of us have actually also looked into, directly into online learning, right? Which is some of the online learning materials, right? Which are put online through videos, progress tracking, and also the ability to communicate online with the original content developer And these platforms such as OpenLearning, really help to enhance that kind of engagement online. But when we look at these three platforms over here, one thing that we noticed that was, missing, right, was how do we digitally transform practical training and technical training through a virtual training environment. When you talk about practical training is, for example, how do I, communicate with my equipment if I actually do technical training? How do I then allow my students or my participants to actually engage with the equipment and be able to see it moving live remotely, and not just through a simulated environment, but actually through a real life scenario. And what you're doing is actually looking through the screen of a computer or looking through a screen of a camera to see what is actually happening over on the other end, right? And the general concept of it is also how do we enhance that kind of learning experience through a virtual training environment, right? So what we did in SHRDC is that we combine the elements of virtual training, right? Combine the elements of collaborative training platforms. We use OpenLearning as a main learning management system, right? And what we did next was we sort of set up this remote online training facility, right? And we actually combine or connect, and visualize the entire facilitated training approach through the collaborative platforms that we have here today, right? And when we connect them and we provide a facilitated training or learning experience through this kind of remote online training facility, we see greater engagement, we see greater, learning enhancement. And this can be done, even though they are at the comfort of their homes or at the comfort of their offices, right? Because we provide technical training, not just for students, but also for the current workforce, right? Which can span from, a range of age groups, right? In terms of technical training and environment. Now, when we talk about facilitated learning, right? How we did it was basically of engaging with the original technical trainer, right? Because when technical training comes into play, it's not like an 8-hour Zoom that you can do in a whole day, right? It needs to be facilitated, right? So you have, you have all the step-by-step material, you have all the step-by-step guides that are actually able to guide you through an entire learning experience on OpenLearning, right? And using, virtual training platforms or collaborative training platforms to enhance the understanding of, the content that is being delivered through the OpenLearning platform, right? Because majority you can see on the OpenLearning platforms are good step-by-step guides. You have videos, you have progress tracking, and many others. However, the engagement with the facilitator and that learning experience is something that we want to embed inside our training programs and delivering it through remote training. Now, the next thing that you will see is that, yes, you see a lot of videos of equipment, you see a lot of videos of programming methods and so on. But the next question is, how do you then allow the users to interact with the equipment on our side to enhance their training experience? So what we did was we sort of set up this remote training facility, right? And as you can see over here, it's basically our equipments, right? Our training kits that are being, right? And basically, this facility is basically set up, at our remote training lab, right? And you can actually see the equipment running live, right? Basically, you're remotely accessing it. It's a 24-hour access, just similar like OpenLearning. You can access it at any time of the day, right? And you can actually do your technical training and, learning through a remote training environment. So when you see what you're doing over here, right, is you are actually programming, right? Or you're actually assessing the equipment remotely and doing your practical training wherever you are. So you can be, in Sabah, Sarawak, you can be, in ASEAN countries, you can even be in Australia, and you can access the remote training facility at any time of the day, right? So basically how it works is basically we have cameras, we have a remote training kind of user interface where you can actually control, and remotely monitor your machines, wherever you are. Right, and this kind of environment actually takes into the context of Industry 4.0, right? When you talk about, data-driven, you talk about remote monitoring. So we translated that kind of learning environment, in Industry 4.0 to the education sector or the training sector, right? So that you are actually able to interact with the machines, you're actually able to do your remote training. Facilitators are always there to support you, right? We have facilitators there, you know, to support all participants, and the facilitators are monitoring you, you know, throughout your training session, right? So this is basically how we, you know, enhance the remote training kind of environment so that everybody is able to still continue their training and learning journey, you know, regardless of whatever the situation is now today. So we started it off in this journey, you know, with OpenLearning, right? And as every start of a program, you know, we always start with a pilot project first, right? And pilot projects, you know, we are fortunate enough to work with IEEE Malaysia, right, to deliver a sort of joint certification program in terms of smart factory competencies done completely remotely, right? Where you have seen that facility just now is exactly what they have worked on, right? And, you know, feedback has been encouraging, right? Because students, they are from Malacca, they're from Pahang, Johor, Penang, you know, they can be anywhere, right, around Malaysia. And they are able to actually access the equipment, able to actually interact with the equipment. And they felt that this was a step ahead in terms of how they, you know, can interact with the machines. It's not just a complete online learning. It's not just a complete virtual lecture. It is actually doing hands-on remotely, right? And that sort of enhancement sort of gotten a lot of good feedback from all the students that we work with. And, you know, we are very fortunate that IEEE Malaysia give us this opportunity to run this. And, you know, we have then moved ahead, right, to translate what we have learned from this pilot project, enhance it even further, and we brought it to the industry now, right? So we are working with many industry participants now, right, that come from many manufacturing environment. You know, what we did was we talk about progressive upskilling, right? Because industry, you know, even though in this current situation, you know, we talk about industry 4.0, deliver training, it doesn't mean that it should stop there, right? So what we did was we progressively still help them to upskill, right? We gone through, you know, all the remote training programs with them. And, you know, with one company, what was surprising or what was amazing was that, you know, after they went through a set of or series of remote training, right, with us, they are actually now doing their own projects, right? They're actually able to then integrate some of their projects using the competencies that they have learned through the remote training facility that we have, right? And this framework is what we also use for face-to-face training. But now when we translated it directly to a remote training, we still see that this sort of you know, framework is still valid, right? Whether you are doing it face-to-face or remotely. So this is something that we see of great value that we can add on to really support the industry in terms of progressive upskilling of industry towards Industry 4.0. So what we see as a key advantages at the current moment, right, in terms of remote training and remote, you know, remote technical training and education, is really the data-driven approach, right? You have a more personalized support and progress feedback because facilitators are then able to deep dive into what are the actual support that you need. Because in an actual learning environment, right, when you're doing it face-to-face, what you notice is that you will always have a set of participants that are faster than the other, right? So you always have a set of participants that are faster than the other. They are moving faster ahead. You know, it happens in every classroom, right? In every classroom, whether it's a primary, secondary school, you know, or university or so on, you always have some students or participants that are always faster than the rest. Now, this kind of approach then helps us to identify, you know, learners that need more support, right? Give them personalized support and give them personalized feedback, right? And by having it remotely, you know, you provide 24-hour remote training facilities, right? It's there for you to access. You have data-driven progress approach. You can actually see what's actually happening on a day-to-day basis. You're actually able to identify, you know, those participants that need more help, right? You enhance their practical learning experience because now they are not able to interact with the machines, but at least, you know, through the remote training kind of setup, they're actually able to engage with the actual machines and equipment, you know, do an actual work that can be applied to their industry applications. Then you talk about active engagement, right? This is really encouraging because, you know, through the combination of different collaborative platforms, you know, engagement is always maintained, right? Accessibility of training facilities, it's always there because you have OpenLearning that's up 24 hours. You have our remote training facilities that is also there. You know, this provides more accessibility of training facilities for certain, you know, companies or even institutions, right? Bearing in mind, yes, infrastructure sometimes is a factor as well, right? Because of internet connectivity and so on. However, you know, when we build the remote online training facilities, we set it up in such a way where, you know, that there is very minimal computation requirements on the end user end, right? Because you access it only through a website link, right? So this actually, you know, lessens the barrier of entry. And we hope that that actually helps more, you know, students and participants to actually engage better through a remote online training facility. Then we talk remote training, you know, you're able to test, you're able to validate, you're able to deploy, right? And hence this provides a more scalable learning experience, more flexible and more collaborative and connected experience, because, you know, you are really in that environment. You know, it's going a little bit, you know, more towards the actual reality of communicating with the machines, right? To actually do their own remote training kind of competency assessments. So with that, that's my short presentation for today. Of course, we'll be willing to answer any questions that you have, you know, throughout the session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chua. You know, you just heard from Dr. Chua, who is, you know, leading the charge in terms of how to, you know, technical training can be done, and reimagine in a way. And a lot of people, what we see as well in terms of technical in nature, and how do you run training online, or how do you, you know, fix the gap in terms of distance, and fix the gap in terms of infra. So Dr. Chua just, you know, gave really practical advice in terms of like how he has done it, and how he's actually running it in his own way and actually getting great comments from it. So, you know, feel free to ask any questions to him directly as well later, in terms of what exactly he did and how else is he moving in this direction further. Thank you so much, Dr. Chua. Last, we have Mr. Grant Dubas, who is our very own Senior Education Advisor for OpenLearning. Please feel free to take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Savine. And again, hi, everybody. In the very short time that we've got together this morning, I wanted to spend a little bit of time doing what I do on a daily basis, and that's sitting down with our partners and customers and understanding more of the strategic side of how organisations are delivering education and training, how they're making use of technologies. I've been in the EdTech industry for a bit over 25 odd years, and have seen, you know, lots of different ecosystems and tools and so forth that organisations use. So today I wanted to share with you some of the discussions and insights and so forth that I've been having with those. I'm coming from a slightly education perspective. However, there are implications naturally for our workforces, and certainly if anything has changed as a result of the last 18 months, and this is a global sort of insight as well, is that certainly governments are changing policy, governments are changing funding models to ensure that educational institutions within their countries are actually creating graduates for the jobs that are needed today and into the future. And I think that's been one of the criticisms of higher education, particularly throughout many countries around the world, is that, you know, students have undertaken 4-year programs, minimum maybe 2-year programs, but you know, up to 4-year programs, have invested a lot of money and effort during that time, and then not had the outcomes possibly as a result of undertaking that education that they would have liked, i.e. they haven't been able to get a job, they don't have the skills that industry is wanting them to actually have. And so if anything else, I think what the pandemic has actually done is really created a major rethink in our educational institutions about how we really need to redesign the whole higher education experience, so that you know, we are creating graduates that are coming into our companies, one, with the skills that we want them to have, and then two, giving them the skills for the jobs that we now need, given that, you know, many of our organisations have certainly pivoted in the way that they do business around the world and inside their own countries. Hopefully you can see that. On the screen there is a number of current and projected trends mainly from a document that was printed about a year ago, actually May 2020. The University of Melbourne Centre for Higher Education produced a discussion document around current and projected trends in higher education. And a year on from that, I think many of these hit the nail in terms of, what are some of the issues and what are some of the trends that we're seeing in organisations, not only in Australia and in Malaysia, but certainly from around the world. I don't have time in this short time to go through all of those. I have, I think in the chat area, I'll just hit enter on that. I'll send you that document there. So if you want to actually look at the actual discussion document and take it away and look at the detail of that document, I recommend it to you to have a really good look at. The items in bold are extra items that I've added. It was great to hear from Dr. Chua there talk about digital transformation. And if one thing that our higher education institutions are doing, certainly globally, is they're very much focused on digital transformation projects. Basically implementing new ways of delivering not only the actual teaching and learning, but naturally the support, the financials, everything that goes into the life cycle of being a student at a higher education institution. And then our companies naturally are following suit with that as they look to implement ways in which they can support their employees, remotely, because we can't get them into the workplace, we can't send them off to training sessions and things like that. So there's a lot of crossovers in the strategies that both higher education institutions and corporate entities are undertaking. I wanted to focus though on a couple of items that are in this list here. Firstly, and again, all of these have implications for our workforce and our corporate organisation. The diminishing capacity for students to undertake international education. It might not be preference for them to do that, but certainly, the way that our organisations are having to lock down. Just announced today that Melbourne's gone into a 7-day lockdown, a tight lockdown from the rest of Australia as well. So this is something that's going to stay with us on and off as we go through these waves until we start to get major levels of vaccination to occur right across the world. And so what does that mean for our countries in which either we export students to study or we're an importer of students coming in? And there are some advantages and disadvantages that we see with respect to that. And we're starting to see some new models start to appear that involve institutions actually and countries allowing the delivery of online education from other countries' institutions. And one example that I'll talk about a little bit later on, and we refer to this as transnational education. That's where an organisation in one country is delivering a degree education or other types of education in another country, either through a partner or through a campus which they set up and then deliver that education. And traditionally, that's been a face-to-face experience. Transnational education has been going on certainly for some time, but certainly now we're starting to see some policy breakdown, some policy changes, I should say, in some countries where they're now allowing those organisations to deliver those services in online modes. Now that can only be good, I think, for the countries concerned, because those graduates can stay in country, they can stay with their families, they can undertake that education, and then they can be employable in that particular market in that country. Hard to see what figures, and I don't have a measure of the figures of how many students who undertake education in another country then come back and become a member of the workforce in the country where they come from. So there's a whole range of pros and cons that come out of the things that are going on at the moment, but I think that's certainly one big pro. The other big trend that naturally we're seeing, and we're seeing this right across the sectors, is naturally a growing acceptance for online study. Lots of surveys out, some good, some bad, but certainly on the whole, students have basically taken to and are enjoying many aspects of online delivery and not enjoying other aspects of those as well. And we hear of Zoom fatigue, and we hear of these other terms that we've come across as a result of undertaking a lot of training using these particular tools. But I think what it's created is a generation of individuals that understand that technology now a lot better. They understand what it can do, they understand what it can't do. And as a result of that, what we've now got are a lot more options at our disposal in how we can deliver education and training to not only our students in our institutions, but also to our employees. One that I've been probably very much involved with and starting to see is this understanding that, I think that the future of these 4-year degrees is very, very short. I think, and we certainly do a lot at OpenLearning around alternative credentials, short courses, micro credentials, which I'll talk a little bit on at the moment as well. But I think, we can't fill the places that need to be filled in our companies if we're going to sit back and wait 4 years for students to become cybersecurity experts or for people to become AI experts. We need to get these people upskilled quickly, and we need to move them into those roles so that they can start creating productivity increases that we want to see in our particular workplaces. So this whole attractiveness of sitting through 4 years, possibly getting a job at the end of it, having a big debt at the end of it as well, I think is something that's slowly starting to diminish as the main way in which we get educated. And we're now moving to a much shorter span, cheaper approach to basically getting. However, the question is we need to maintain that quality. And so there's a lot of work going on in our institutions about how we can shorten that educational experience that we see our students for, but still maintain quality, still give them the training and the education that they need to fulfill those jobs that we need them to go into. And then lastly, and I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges for our higher educational institutions, is around the rise and the acceptance of non-traditional course deliverers such as Google Career Certificates, other companies that are actually going straight to market for graduates, running them through their training, putting courses together, putting degrees together, delivering those degrees, and then actively employing them at the end of the day. And we're seeing that with a lot of the big companies around the world, where they're starting to make sure that they target those individuals that they want to fill those jobs that they've got needs for directly through recruiting them, training them, putting them into actual jobs themselves, and doing that naturally, as I said before, cheaper and shorter than our traditional universities and other education institutions can do. So that's a really interesting one, and one to keep an eye on, because I think it's one that we're going to see a lot more of organisations doing. And already, Google Career Certificates are having a major impact on really unsettling the traditional way that we do get educated. One that probably everyone, though, when I talk to institutions about the future of what higher education is going to look like for them, the word that comes up most often than not is partnerships. And it's partnerships with companies like us, it's partnership with organisations like KPMG, it's partnerships with industry bodies, it's partnership with membership groups, it's partnership with edtech vendors and so forth. But I think educational institutions have realised they cannot do this on their own. Their funding has decreased, their people have decreased, their normal traditional funding mechanisms have dried up. And so, this ability to partner with organisations, and I think where OpenLearning fits within this is that we naturally provide a partnership to organisations to allow them to maybe address non-traditional pathways that their employees or their students would go through to get the skills that they need to get. And so we're seeing partnerships as being a major point of change that's going on. But just generally, I think the biggest opportunity is to disrupt education generally. One would argue that the current, the previous or pre-COVID world of education was one that was, being as successful as it possibly could be. And just because we've been doing it for 1,000 years doesn't mean that's the right way that we do it going forward. And like pretty much every other sort of sector, education had to go through a disruption. And I think the COVID has brought on that disruption. And we're now starting to see, and to its thing, the higher educational institutions actually have responded very, very well, and they've responded very, very quickly. And there isn't one institution that I'm talking to at the moment that hasn't got plans in place to really change what they're doing. No one sees large lecture theatres of 400 students as the way forward. You know, so what do we do? What do we do with those buildings? What do we do? And then there's lots of models around that. Do we bring the community into that space and allow the community to use those facilities where in the past we would have used them for lectures? And so there's different models being put forward with institutions as to what this could look like going forward. But no one suggested that we go back to what we had pre-COVID, that's for sure. McKinsey and Co, if you follow them at all, have a great paper out, and you can hit their website, the link's there, and when I send this out later on, you can actually go to that. But, you know, they foresee a fundamental reimagining of higher education where everything's changed. Everything is completely changed. And you know, the business models have changed. There's even, you know, many institutions looking at subscription models now where instead of paying a fee to study a 4-year degree, you actually subscribe to be a member of that university for the rest of your life. And you can come in and come out. You come in, do some short courses, you go out, you work, you need some upskilling, you go back, you do some more training, you go back out to the workforce, you come back, you want to do something of interest, and so on. So there's all sorts of different models that wouldn't even have been really investigated unless the pandemic came along, and we're starting to see those models take place. And not only in, as I said, teaching and delivery, it's in the way in which people pay for their education. It's the way in which they get supported in their education. It's the way in which they undergo on-the-job training while they're undertaking their education. And like I said before, there's lots of different examples. This is a slide from the recent Holland IQ. If you don't follow Holland IQ to get your data around what the world is doing, please go and have a look at what they do. But you can see here a whole range of different this is, if you like, the life cycle of a student in terms of the different pathways they could take to get a job at the end of the day. And you can see some of the ways in which institutions are responding in terms of providing the skills and the training and the opportunities that our graduates are going to need to actually go out and get a job. So there's some interesting information around that. I'm going to focus on one of those, and that's transnational education. I spoke a little bit about this before, just to finish off. And one example of change that we're seeing is in Vietnam at the moment, where Vietnam has actually gone and changed the way in which they allow other countries to deliver education to their people inside their country. And last October, they released this thing called Circular 38. And basically what it does, it allows other countries to deliver education online across border. And I think, you know, that's a great response. So those students can still undertake training from other institutions. The competition has increased. And so, you know, increased competition, I think, is something that we wanted to see amongst the institutions as well. That lists the level of quality of, and certainly lists the level of options that individuals have to undertake training in a global world, that's for sure. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more of these sorts of examples. Transnational education, as I said, for online is just one of those examples. But this is a really good one of how things have changed and how people are adapting to that change. A couple of other things before I finish. Micro-credentials is something that OpenLearning is certainly leading the way in Australia and Malaysia. We've delivered some frameworks. We have many organisations delivering what we call Open Creds, and Open Creds is our name for micro-credentials, which are delivered on the actual OpenLearning platform. And you know, different modes for different people. Some people delivering them as tasters, some people delivering them as pathways into bigger qualifications, others just doing it out of general interest because there's a skill that industry needs and no one's meeting that skill yet, and we need people trained quickly. We can do that via a micro-credential. I'm not going to go through all of these. As I said, I'll send you these slides, and Savine and the team up in Malaysia can certainly share with you a lot more about what we're doing in the micro-credential space and how you actually can apply for some funding to develop micro-credentials as part of a fund that we've got going to get people started if they've not been developing micro-credentials at this point in time. As I said, I talked about Open Creds. Open Creds is that framework. The guys up in Malaysia have done a lot of work around aligning these to guidelines from the Malaysian government and so forth. So please have a chat with Savine and the team around that sort of thing. There's some documents you can download and so forth. I just wanted to finish then with some examples of what does a micro-credential or an open cred look like, and a few examples here. We have open creds around for teacher professional development under a brand called teach.com.au, which is a whole lot of training for teachers around managing behaviour in classrooms and so on and so on. So there's a lot of short credentials that align to teaching qualifications and to industry practice with inside, in this case, New South Wales in Australia. The second one, the International School of Colour and Design, is an interesting one. This was a full qualification that these guys delivered online, but there was a different market that they wanted to attack with certain parts of that qualification. So they broke it down. They produced smaller qualifications or smaller micro-credentials that allow the organisations to actually get access to that really key bit of information to allow them to upskill and move into the industry. And then the second last one was Deakin Co. Deakin Co is a Deakin Universities in Australia. They have a great relationship with the Indian Cricket League, for those who follow the IPL, and have a relationship with the Rajasthan Royals to provide training around management and leadership and so forth as part of that. And that can stack into some bigger qualifications down the track. And then lastly, you can see the one on the screen there. This is from Successful Graduate, which is a company in Australia who are now delivering some training and some short courses for students in Malaysia around getting started in the workforce and undertaking training and so forth. So it gives you some examples of those sort of ones that are available. Savine, that covers me off. Hopefully I got through in the short amount of time there. So, but look, any questions, please post them on there. Very happy to talk to any of you about these trends and share with you lots of documents. We've got lots of research. And I love sitting down and just having a chat about that and talking strategy with organisations. Thanks, Savine.
Thank you so much, Grant. You just heard from Grant Beavers, our Senior Education Advisor in OpenLearning. He just shared a whole bunch of real-life examples of what's actually happening across the world. And it's very real because it can also very much happen here in Malaysia as well. You know, all these theories and all these strategies that are happening is actually being adapted by a whole host of colleges, universities, training companies, corporates, and that also means competition is increasing globally as well. And that just kind of stresses the fact in terms of why reimagining what you used to do and checking and having that balance to see whether it's actually the strategy moving forward is really important. Like Grant said, I was really happy to just chat with anyone in terms of like their ideas and strategies, and you can take that from there as well. Thank you so much, Grant. Guys, you know, we've just heard from all our speakers. Right now, we're going to move on to the next section, which is Q&A time. You know, feel free to ask any question you like in the Q&A chat function at the bottom. If you would like to address that to someone very specific, please do note that as well, and we can kind of just ask the question directly. If it's a general question, that's no problem as well. We can kind of take that forward. I'll start off the questions. And first, I would like to ask Shamini. We heard various different things in terms of training, how we're changing that. What is the role of L&D teams? You know, L&D teams specifically within the companies and corporations in cultivating the mindset, right? In cultivating this lifelong learning organizational mindset. And I would like to just add on another question that came in from the participants, Ms. Sui. Consideration when it comes to mental health, wellness, and work-life balance due to the whole digital anxiety that's happening with, you know, people talking about Zoom fatigue and overwhelming amount of webinars and meetings, and stress from rapid upskilling and reskilling push from the companies. And just to finish the question, is there a way to better enhance human relationship with working from home and taking on these online programs?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Arvind. So if you think about it, the role of L&D teams hasn't changed. The thing that has changed is how are they disseminating the trainings now? At the end of the day, L&D still needs to empower their people to constantly want to learn new things, new skills, gain new knowledge and abilities and so on. The idea here now is, how do they disseminate it? No longer can you do face-to-face. It needs to be virtual. So what does that mean for the organization? And as you rightly said, the question that was asked, L&D as well as HR now also needs to think about how do they handle this whole fatigue that people are feeling. I personally have been on calls from 8 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. I think my personal record at the moment is 16 calls in a day. Webinars, conference calls, you name it. I had 16 in one particular day. And at the end of the day, you do get fatigue. So the role learning and development that can then play is to help people better manage this. In KPMG, we are also, our L&D as well as our PPC, which is our HR, what they look at is also how giving us ideas on how people can better manage all of this. How do you calm yourself? They give us things like doing exercises while we're sitting at our desk and working and so on. So that is the role learning and development needs to play now. It's no longer a simple, this is the training, go do it. It's also helping them manage sitting at home 24/7 for the last 1.5 years.
Yeah. Oh, no, 16. That's really interesting. Just to follow on from that, how have you seen any examples that you can share that how L&D teams or HR teams actually did something different to motivate the culture for learning in terms of taking that initiative up for themselves?
Okay, so I'll use KPMG as an example. So in KPMG, as I said, one of the things that we have done over the last 1.5 years is to give out, I forget the name of the course that the name of the series that is being done, but it's basically, there are about 300 short courses that you can go at any time and do it. It's 15 minutes, you go in and you learn something. Whether it's a technical skill or a soft skill, it is there. So that is something that KPMG has done, and it's a global initiative. So it doesn't matter which part of KPMG, which part of the world you're sitting in, you can do this 15 minutes a day or half an hour a day, 2-3 courses, and it's there for you. So those are some of the things that learning and development teams have been doing. The other thing that they've also been doing is to introduce short games, like using Kahoot or the various platforms that are available to instill short, previously you could just tell them, stand up, walk around the classroom and then sit down to get their energy level up. But now you can't do that. So what does that mean for your organization? And a lot of learning development teams have incorporated all these little games into their sessions to make it more lively as well. So those are some of the things that we've seen happening.
Oh, that's great. So in a way, it's like it's a top-down approach to say, hey, we encourage this. It's okay to take 15 minutes out and go and and learn something, and please go and do it. And the second thing is reimagining that little mode of what you do. How do you reimagine getting up and doing exercise and building your state in terms of preparation for learning? This is really great. Thank you so much for that. And I think, from my perspective as well, it's more of how do you encourage that as well in terms of getting and making it available, because there's investment there as well in terms of trying to get that moving from that. I'll take the next question here from Mr. Nizam. With the whole program that you're running, you guys moved online like really quickly. As NIOSH was running online programs like almost within a couple of months of the pandemic. What kind of challenges did you face as an industry body? And what happened then? And how's that different today? As it's been more than a year now.
Thank you, Sarvin, for the question. I think I come across some of the questions in the Q&A session as well. The thing with training on occupational safety and health, we are mastering the subject, but the implementation and agreement must come from the employer themselves, or rather the subscriber or the captain of the industry, and other regulatory body, if I have to mention. This thing considered new to some. We have explored this 5 years ago. We have on pilot run for our staff before we embark into industry. Pandemic just accelerate further and become a necessity for us to grow faster than we thought. But the key element here is the acceptance from the stakeholders. For us, we work with the GLC, for example. We have to present the solution. We have to work with their safety and health department to convince their HR department and bring it up to at the policy level to accept this level of training, or rather complementary. But this will only consider during pandemic. After CMCO implemented, when we can gather again, I believe culturally we still believe that we need to have a face-to-face in order to deliver this training. For me, the progress is there, a lot of hard work, but with recent results, we'll be able to convince slowly more employers and subscribers start to believe, because first thing first, knowledge needs to be transmitted. Then only you observe the skill through online. And then when you see them at the workplace, other people need to do some simple tests just to ensure that competency really put into progress by the workers. So a lot of confirmation need to be done, but for occupational safety and health management system, for those employers and industrial players, they have the mechanism in place to check this at site. We just do a pre-training, pre-employment training, so that the workers and also contractors will be able to gain and ready to practice. The enforcement will be done at the site, and also the management system will take place. The challenge would be if you have clear workplace management system, not only on occupational safety and health, you can have it on environmental management system, you can have quality management system. This content is actually another built-in content to be simultaneously conducted, as it is necessary for the workers to have before entering workplace. Education and training prior to engagement is actually employment is actually develop the skill and attitude of the worker, but to comply with the requirements and also occupational and workplace culture in specific organization. See, under Occupational Safety and Health Act, anything were to happen in the premise, the government will do their part in investigating the cause, but the obligation of answering that remain to the employer and the premises, just like what happened to the recent LRT crash. They have their own team to investigate, but the regulators still go in, and for different purpose of objective and new implementation, definitely this incident will change the cost of doing work for that particular organization. I say there's a lot of challenges and mindset need to be enhanced, and I come across one generational gap that we need to address. Those who hold the policy now, some of them never experienced this online learning, online methods. I take example, another one is online banking. Those days, in the beginning of my employment, I involved with that, convincing people to go on online banking. Those days are very hard to explain, but now you cannot live without it. So it takes some time or a change of generation to see this really happen in a totality. But as I mentioned in our rehearsal and also for the rest of us, I believe this online is a complementary, most preferred probably blended learning, as some of the confidence level and also the integrity of the assessment still at stake. So that would be my take on that. Everybody must agree before we embark into it. Worker normally give feedbacks later on, so that probably contribute to the fine-tuning and addressing the minor customized issues. If we have the stakeholders, regulator of that particular industry, the company that obligated to the compliance, and worker and contractor simply follow the requirements. And we have to make sure that it is stable, consistent, and recorded for the benefit organization for their system. Sarvin, that's about,
that's a really interesting take, right? Acceptance comes from multiple stakeholders,
yes,
and
yes.
At the end of it, even though they might want it first, because it really depends on who's organizing it as well. I just want to add another question here from Ilaj Solan Mohan. You know, in your experience, Mr. Nizam, in terms of the institutions you're dealing with, is industry recognizing remote training and online learning as a legitimate certification? Could SKM certification be achieved through remote trainings at this stage? And do you think that is changing?
Okay, for some who are exposed like oil and gas industry, energy industry, it's part of their norm already because they receive contractors from overseas. They also remotely mobilizing their workers, so they will go for best possible option as long as knowledge will be able to be transmitted. And they have another system of checking during the site implementation. So these two parties must get involved. We as a training provider and also the subscriber to ensure the compliance at site. And coming back to your question, I think many things need to be done in convincing other industry, and their profile in terms of OSH compliance is not as good as people with working with high risk. When high risk job, minimal tolerance, or to some zero tolerance given on if you don't complete your training, you cannot enter the work site. So that kind of tolerance now need to be enhanced for some industry, especially those involved with high risk. And sometimes we have to go back to their incident records to convince. And we need to convince them to have a sound management system that begin with good plan, pre-mobilization, implementation, and the most important part, the evaluation at the end of it. Lucky that we have GLCs that are exposed to this. Sometimes we've been challenged by their progress as well. So I would say this is not a National Institute obligations alone. If we are working with the industry with their pace and their requirements, we are obligated to fulfill the requirements of the workers and the contractors.
So in a way, it's possible. It's just that it's
it's possible.
At a different pace.
As we get more numbers, then we can get more population to embark into this.
No, thank you so much for that. My next question is actually targeted at Dr. Chua. You said something very interesting just now, where you raised the importance of facilitation. A lot of people take online courses as self-paced most of the time, in terms of you just log in and then you continue on your own. But you brought up something very different in terms of how you engage your students, where there's a facilitation program in there, almost like a system. Could you just walk us through that in terms of like how did you set it up, the importance of it, and what's the feedback you're getting from that?
Yep, sure, Sarvin. Thank you very much for the question. So when we embark on our journey of digitally transforming technical training, right? What we noticed is that we wanted it to be a very unique experience, especially for the end user, right? So when we talk about facilitated approach, it's actually to ensure that there is still continuous engagement between the participant and also the facilitator through the program. Why training environment, right? And when we see this combination of remote training using facilitator approach, we see better engagement, right? We see that participants don't struggle in silence, right? Whenever it comes to online learning, right? So then we are able to identify, who progresses faster, who progresses not so fast, where they have certain challenges, and we are able to proactively identify those and sort of help them through in a better way. Now, we also didn't want to have a situation where, the learners take a very long time to complete a certain module, right? Because when they start to do that, sometimes it becomes a loss of motivation, right? So when we want to keep it sort of, shorten duration, but at the same time, keep their motivation high and create a better impact for them or more effective for them after the online training or remote training. Yeah.
And how are your time? Are they there as and when? Like, how do your students know that facilitation is available?
Okay, so we usually set check-in times, right? Or we usually provide, let's say if it's a day training or a few days training, so the facilitator is always available there 9 to 6, for example, right? So the MS Teams or Zoom are always on, right? Participants can actually engage with the trainer at any time, right? So then they will be able to discuss what are the problems. And because the remote training sessions are sort of, they are able to be accessed by the facilitators. So they can sort of remote in, see what the participants are doing, and then come out and explain to them what they're actually doing right or wrong, right? So this becomes a better engagement for the participants. And, they sort of feel that they are not left out, throughout the whole training program. And they feel it's more personalized because, their struggles or their challenges are being acknowledged, through that facilitated training approach.
Oh, that's great. So it removes the loneliness experience, especially from home, right? And
correct.
Learning wherever you are, and it also makes them feel like someone is there teaching them. And
yes,
the way that notion that online learning equals, I just do whatever I want, and then try it out. I thought that was a really interesting approach because it not only are you changing the way in terms of how engineering courses are run, you're also changing the way in terms of like making sure the experience of the student is also taken into account in terms of running that program as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Chua. That no really helped me. My next question is actually targeted to Grant. Grant, is multiple questions here that I'm going to group it up together. This is from Shamir Marshall and Samiha Saleh. I'll start off with the first one. In your line of work and in terms of what you're seeing in the market, the micro-credentials that are being offered online in today's world, are they actually recognized by industry? Are they recognized? Yes. And what add-on value to our individual professional certificates maybe?
Yeah, look, great questions. And I think, micro-credentials in its own is a buzzword for, some people are substituting them for short courses. Some of them are substituting for non-accredited or accredited. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a mixture of these. And so depending upon what you're wanting to achieve by offering a micro-credential will determine whether or not you go and get it accredited or not. If you want to make a micro-credential part of a stackable qualification, so you want people to actually undertake one unit that gives them credit into a much bigger qualification, then naturally it needs to be accredited. It needs to go through the approval processes because it forms part of that overall qualification. However, there are a number of topics. I did just a micro-credential, micro-credential the other day on really an introduction to artificial intelligence. And I did it to just give me some background knowledge so that I could have a successful conversation with someone about what's happening with artificial intelligence at the moment. My goal at the end of it was not to get credit to go into a course somewhere. My goal was to just instill into me some knowledge so that I could then talk about it or use it in some form of the work that I do. So to answer the question, it can be, it can be a mixture of any and all of those things. I posted a response to a question before there about, is micro-credentials just for adult learning? And in fact, there's lots of examples where we've got organisations that are using micro-credentials for pathways for students who don't make it into qualifications. And a great example of that is the University of New South Wales transition program, which we work with them on, where students who didn't get their first choice into University of New South Wales can then undertake this transition program, which is pretty much micro-credentials. It gives them some of the skills that they're going to need to be successful once they actually get into the course. But successfully completing those gives them entrance into a qualification. So it's not giving them perhaps the a credit towards the qualification, but it's being used as a pathway to get them into something that they wouldn't have been able to get into based on how they finished their studies at high school and so on. So lots of different ways. And I think the thing is, you have to, as an organisation delivering micro-credentials, have to have the goal in mind. What is it you're wanting to deliver? Why are you getting into this thing of micro-credentials? What is it meant to achieve? If you're just doing it because it sounds cool and the company next door is doing micro-credentials, so we've got to do micro-credentials, you're not really doing it probably for the right reason. So there has to be a reason, there has to be a goal. Is it part of accreditation, non-accreditation? What is the reason for doing that? And many of the organisations we work with, the key reason is there's a gap in industry for that skill. We need, there's 500,000 jobs in a particular industry that need to be filled and need to be filled now. Because if we don't fill those jobs, then we're going to be in all sorts of strife. So therefore, let's build some of these micro-credentials to get people started down that track. If we need them to have more advanced skills, we can put them into more accredited training and much more higher qualifications. But that tends to be the way in which many organisations get started.
Yeah, I like what you said. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Given that and it's about identifying the gap that you're trying to solve for, right? And I thought you did a really interesting take on that. And just an add-on question to Shamir Marshall. Do you think universities and training, colleges, is that a necessity to change the system in terms, because most four-year degrees are the moneymaker in most universities and colleges? Do you see them as incentivized to break it up and change the direction they're going with? Sorry, Grant, that question was for you, actually.
Oh, sorry, for me. Oh, absolutely. Look, you're talking to the converted. I mean, my degree is in science, maths, and computing as a teacher. I look at our education systems. I look at our higher education systems. I look at the generation of students that are coming through, the technology. These guys have never not known a mobile phone. They've never not known the internet. And getting them to sit in an auditorium full of 400 people for 4 years and listen to a lecturer being pushed down on them, this is not the way these guys want to learn and get education. So we've rapidly had to change, and we need to change the way in which we cater for the new ways in which people learn now. Some of it's online, some of it's remote, a lot of it's still on campus, and a lot of it will continue to be on campus. But it's what we do on campus with our students that will radically shift from what we've done in the past. What all of us went through when we got our degrees and so forth, that's just not going to fly anymore. And one, it's just not sustainable from a funding model. It's not sustainable from getting people the jobs they want to get, certainly the jobs we need them to get in the short time that we need them to get them. So I think there's a whole lot of things that are coming together. And to me, how I look at it is that a higher education needed something to kick it in the pants to change. And unfortunately, that was the pandemic. But fortunately, that's a great thing, because education will never be the same again as a result of that. And I think all for the good. Others will disagree, but that's my view.
No, that's okay. That's an interesting view, definitely, because it cuts across any country for that matter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sharmini, do you see this happening with the corporates in terms of acceptance? So with all the people that you engage with, question one, do they accept it in terms of, hey, accepting micro-credentials or shorter courses that are filling the gap within the organization? And do they accept the programs that are being offered? Two is, are they going to accept an online version of it, given the current situation? And three, yeah, I'll stop there first. Let's get the two questions in.
So short answer is they have to accept it. There's no, let me think about it and then I will decide. They've got no choice, you know, and the reality of the last 18 months and you're looking at another 18 to 24 months moving forward, this is our new reality. If you are now saying, I need to wait for everything to go back to normal before I start accrediting my people and signing off on trainings and so on, you're going to be waiting for a long, long time, which then means your people are not getting upskilled, your people are not getting reskilled, your people are not going to know what to do, how to do, when to do it. And your business is going to suffer. So the answer is, short answer is, you don't have a choice. You have to change the way you're doing things. Otherwise, you are going to be on the losing end.
And so, you know, companies are not publicly saying that, but I guess internally that's what they have to be thinking of.
Exactly.
From the educator's standpoint, you know, they're going, you know, will the company actually, you know, listen, right? If I'm actually training this, what kind of challenges do you see from the employee side? You know, with this new way of learning, do you see employees facing challenges from this?
Definitely, especially if it's a hands-on training. To now do it virtually is the hardest thing, both from an employee perspective as well as the facilitator's perspective. You know, how do I now, you see, I'll use my niece as an example. She's just started her university, and for the last 2 semesters, she's been doing it online. So to keep awake, she has started knitting. You know, just so that she's awake, she's knitting while listening to what the lecturer is saying. You know, so how do you stay awake to make sure that whatever is being said is going in and actually making sense? And this is applicable to both employees, to make sure that whatever I'm saying makes sense when I'm training my people, as well as when my people are listening to me, it needs to make sense to them. It needs to resonate with them that what is being said and how does this impact their lives in the work environment.
So it's starting with why, right? Basically, it's why are you doing what you're doing, and why?
Exactly.
I guess it's two ways, right? The top down as well, from the company perspective, they have to really nail it home to go, hey, this is the reason you're doing this, and I'm not simply putting you through this training.
Exactly. I mean, I just want to touch a little bit on that top down that you mentioned just now, and there are a lot of culture questions that are coming in there as well. Yeah. Top down is key to your business and your people learning. You know, if the top management, if your CEOs and your C-suites and your MDs are not learning or changing, the bottom lines are going to say, well, the bosses are not doing the changes, so why should I do those changes? You know, and that becomes key as well. It has to be a top-down approach. Top has to say, I need to change, and therefore my people need to change as well. You know, it has to be top-down, and culture also has to be top-down driven.
I understand. Oh, no, that definitely says the point, right? it's about the harder part is, you know, HR sometimes to go and tell top down to say, hey, you need to do it. And that's where the challenge is going to come through as well, right? If the top down doesn't go, that's where the issue is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting standpoint. Oh, well, yeah, there was a lot of questions on that. We're trying to run through. But yeah, guys, I'm sorry, we are running out of time. But I'm just going to try to summarize certain questions a little bit more, which then comes on to the point of what Sharmini was saying in terms of the niece knitting. Dr. Chua, then, you know, when you're running the remote training, like, how do you conduct effective group discussions? Or how do you test the participants' understanding of the topic trained in a remote setting?
So basically, what we do, because we have the the virtual training and collaborative platforms that we work with, like Teams, Zoom, or even all the other Miro bots and so on. So what we do on Open Learning is that every section of learning activities, there's always a submission of assessments, right? Where they will need to submit what they have done throughout that learning activity, right? And from there, we can actually track progress. And of course, during every check-in sessions that we do with them, we will definitely open up for group discussions, ask them, okay, so in this learning activity that you have gone through, section 1, what have you learned? Is there any struggles that you face? And, having a collaborative platform helps people learn together, right? When you post questions, when you post discussion questions, it helps people to talk to each other and collaborate better, right, in that environment. And, every remote training, that what we do is that we will always have an assessment at the end, right? We will have an assessment rubrics where we will actually, has done, right, through their remote training journey. And, then we take the boxes, right, whether they have successfully complete, and then, assess the competency from there. So that there is a rubrics of how we assess participants to do remote training. And, we help them through that way to assess where they have, whether is it a comprehension issue or whether is it a technical issue that they don't understand. So that's basically our steps to help them to understand and engage better.
So it's not just go online and take that course. It's about how do you encourage the conversation online? How do you actively do something? It's like, you got the social element, you got the active element, and you kind of combine all of that into an experience, right? And the platform matters, the tools that you use matter, but that doesn't mean you can't be done. And I think that's really important in terms of engaging your learner. That's really interesting as well, in terms of how it's a different way of looking at it, right? And you can't just and it's a skill set that's required as well to kind of build that kind of environment in terms of course design and learning design that's required in that. For everyone, thank you so much, Dr. Chua. Guys, it's 11:50. I'm really sorry we're running out of time. There's a whole bunch of questions, and I really appreciate it for we hit almost 300 people today in terms of the webinar, and we do want to make sure we answer all your questions. So what's going to happen is we will actually collate all the questions now. And we will actually reach out to the speakers directly to get their feedback and their answers on all the questions that you have posted. And then we will send out a follow-up email after the session to kind of answering all the questions that were not done today. I do apologize that we couldn't get through this. It's great to see that there's a lot of questions coming through. But we will definitely answer that as we go. So if you have any more questions, please quickly add it into the Q&A chat. And we can kind of get to that as far as we can. Just to kind of finish up, I believe some of the speakers have something that they want to shout about in terms of their upcoming programs and upcoming projects. So from an open learning standpoint, Grant touched about it a little bit, where Open Learning has created and drafted its own framework. A framework in terms of how open in both Malaysia as well in Australia. In Malaysia, we do follow the best practices guidelines from MQA. So everything is designed in a way to encourage facilitation and of the building of all these courses in Malaysia. So please feel free to reach out to anyone in Open Learning. We will put it in the chat as well in terms of how to contact us. In regards to KPMG, Shamimi, would you want to add to this? Oh, sorry, Dr. Chua first, sorry.
Okay, yeah, sure. So basically right now, with the current MCO conditions in Malaysia, we are actually delivering a lot of remote online training at the moment. So if you're willing to explore and you would like to see how we run our course delivery and we would like to participate in our programs, we are having a buy one free one promotion right now. So feel free to reach out to us and we will be more than happy to to facilitate conversations around the remote training programs that we have. Currently, these two programs are our signature Smart Factory programs that we have, which we are delivering through the remote online training platforms, right? So do reach out to us if you are keen to explore. You know, and being it remote training, one thing that I would like to share as well is that you can be from any parts of Malaysia, right? You can be in Pahang, Johor, Penang, Sabah, Sarawak, doesn't matter. And, you know, for those, you know, participants here today from, you know, from other countries, right? You are also able to participate in this, right? And this is something that we are willing to explore. So if you are keen to look into this with us, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chua. Next with Sharmini.
Okay, so I just wanted to touch, if you see behind me, there's a QR code. So you can actually scan that QR code, or there's an access link there. What we're doing is to help organizations with their HR, we are doing a HR health check. So you answer, you fill out the form, we'll send you the link, answer about 50+ questions, and we will give you a short report looking at these 9 elements within HR, you know, so how well is your strategy doing, your policies and procedures, what are some of the fine tunings that you can do. Learning and development is definitely one of the things that we're looking at as well. You know, so there are 9 elements that we're looking at. Feel free to copy that link or scan the QR code behind me and fill it up, and we will then get in touch with you on the follow-ups. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, great opportunity here. You can go for that. Mr. Nizam, would you like to chat more about NIOSH's upcoming courses? Mr. Nizam, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Last but not least, we would like to introduce this. Since it is still fall into the promotional period, we are looking into 5,000 subscription for e-hailers. E-hailing, people are working in hailing sector. How to ride motorcycle safely, and also work with the driving defensively. So we are targeting 5,000. At this moment, already we have recorded about 800 to date. So there are 4,200 available seats before it become a chargeable training program. We are here to help, which is doubted by many of the employers. See, for e-hailing riders, they are not employees, rather they are not workers. They are actually a self-employed person, and rather considered as partner to the digital content manufacturer. So basically they are the master of their own work. So we need to train them as they are the employer that take care of their own as a worker. A bit unique, but we try our best to deliver this and show some examples. The examples. Better late than never, as some of the incident has been recorded, and we feel obligated to deliver this. And some other partners are showing some interest because it is necessary. But in light of 5G, 5th generation of information technology, I believe that this kind of courses is we have to do it first, and you improve accordingly, because you never know what level of customization required for different level. For example, education, higher education, workplace learning. We have specific requirements that may not be addressed by all platform as fits all solution. My recommendation is just do it and customize it along the way. And later on, we're gonna have a good alternative and options. And my worry is if this pandemic really going down and we can live in a herd immunity situation, and what if there's another pandemic, or rather a global disaster were to come again, and how prepared we are to continue with our life. So this option might be the only option in that situation. So to me, and I believe the panelists also agree, we have to do it something is better than nothing. And for us, the knowledge in OSH is necessity for people before they go to work. If you tolerate on this, we will deal with more incidents if the alternative is worth taking too long to be considered, and policy making need to be. The most important part for training is the evaluation, and later on we can improve along the way. So we believe in that, and then that probably the key to success of this online learning and this program. Sarvin, that concludes my presentation appearance this morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it so much.
Thank you so much. Shout out to the team, organizing team. Thank you so much for organizing such a session. It's been really wonderful. There's some pop-up questions that are coming up for all the attendees. Please feel free to answer. You've heard a whole host of things, everything from how L&D teams are setting up, how companies should be looking at their training and development of their staff, how important it is, from actually showing you that it's possible in an engineering world to run online and remote training, and how facilitation can change the game in terms of a student experience. You're also seeing nationwide how programs can be run online and how they can move quickly in specific sectors and specific industries as well. And you're hearing globally in terms of how higher education is actually changing in light of the pandemic and the incentive pushed by the pandemic, in terms of new business models, new collaborations, which is very key. It's no longer you do this alone. It's how you kind of partner up and how you kind of work together. So thank you so much to all our speakers today. For taking the time and sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate everything that you've said. To everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today and spending 2 hours with us. It's really happy to see in terms of like 300 people coming and joining us. For all the questions unanswered, we will reach out to you post the webinar. We will reach out to the speakers to get their feedback in terms of all targeted questions. And then we will reach out with an email that will cover the questions unanswered, as well as the presentations from today. Okay, this is just part of our journey as well in terms of trying to encourage the conversations in terms of how learning and training can be reimagined, how we can help each other in terms of sharing ideas and thoughts across. Thank you so much everyone for joining us. If you need to reach out to us, please feel free to reach out to all our contact information, and through the email that we will send out, we'll put out contact information as well. Till then, have a great day. It's almost Friday. Take care. Enjoy yourselves.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Savine. Well done.
Thank you. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Sarvin. Thank you, team. Thank you. Bye.